I'm standing in a courtroom right now, and my own children are staring at me like I'm a ghost they thought they'd already buried. The judge just asked me to approach the bench with evidence, and I'm holding a small voice recorder that contains every word they said about me when they thought I couldn't understand anymore. My hands are shaking, but not from fear, from rage that's been building for 6 months. Before I tell you what's on this recording and what I'm about to do with it, I need you to do something for me. Leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching this from. Because what happened to me could happen to anyone, anywhere, and I want to know this message is reaching people who might need to hear it. My name is Margaret Catherine Brennan. I'm 62 years old, and until 8 months ago, I lived what most people would call a dream life in Greenwich, Connecticut. My late husband Thomas built a commercial real estate empire over 30 years, and when he passed 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack, he left me with assets worth approximately $18 million. Properties in Connecticut, Florida, and Colorado, investment portfolios, a home on Long Island Sound that's been in architectural magazines. I have 2 children, Daniel, 37, who works in finance in Manhattan, and Caroline, 34, a former marketing executive who stopped working after she married a man named Preston Whitmore IV. Yes, the 4th, which should have been my first warning. Thomas and I raised our children with every advantage, but we also taught them the value of work and independence. Or so I thought. After Thomas died, I went through the normal grief process. I saw a therapist, I traveled with friends, I threw myself into charity work with the Greenwich Hospital Foundation. I was managing, I was healing. My mind was sharp. I handled all of Thomas's business affairs, worked with our attorneys and financial advisors, managed property sales and acquisitions. I was functioning at full capacity. Then, about 8 months ago, I made a simple mistake. I was hosting Thanksgiving dinner, and I put the turkey in the oven, but forgot to turn the oven on. We didn't discover it until 2 hours later. Everyone laughed it off. I laughed it off. It was a stupid error, the kind anyone makes when they're coordinating a meal for 12 people. But I saw Daniel and Caroline exchange a look across the kitchen. It was brief, but it was significant. The kind of look that said, "Are you seeing this too?" After that, they started watching me differently. Daniel began calling every day, sometimes twice a day, asking how I was feeling, if I was remembering to take my vitamins, if I was getting confused about anything. Caroline started showing up unannounced at the house, always with some excuse about being in the neighborhood, even though she lives in Darien, which is not on the way to anywhere from our home. She'd walk through the rooms like she was taking inventory, touching things, asking me if I remembered where items came from, who gave them to us. In January, Caroline suggested I see a neurologist, just for a checkup. She'd made the appointment already, she said, with a doctor in Stamford who specialized in geriatric cognitive health. She was so insistent, and I thought, why not? If it gives them peace of mind, what's the harm? So I went. I took every test they gave me. Memory tests, spatial reasoning, word association, the clock drawing test, everything. The doctor, a pleasant woman in her 50s named Dr. Restrepo, told me at the end that I scored in the 92nd percentile for my age group. My cognitive function was excellent. She saw no signs of dementia, Alzheimer's, or any cognitive decline. She said I was sharper than most people half my age. I told Daniel and Caroline the good news that night at dinner. I'd invited them both over specifically to share the results. I expected relief, maybe even celebration. Instead, Daniel's face fell. Caroline looked at her plate. Then Daniel said something that made my blood run cold. "Mom, sometimes these tests don't catch things in the early stages. Maybe we should get a second opinion." They wanted me to fail that test. The realization hit me like physical force. My own children wanted me to have dementia. Over the next few weeks, their behavior intensified. Daniel started suggesting I add him to my bank accounts, just in case something happened, and I couldn't access funds. Caroline brought over a stack of legal documents one afternoon, saying they were just updates to my estate planning that Thomas's old attorney had recommended. She was very casual about it, said I should just sign them and she'd take care of filing everything. I told her I'd have my own attorney review them first. She got angry. She actually got angry with me for wanting to have my lawyer look at legal documents before signing them. That's when I knew something was very wrong. I started paying attention, really paying attention. I noticed that pills in my medication organizer were disappearing faster than they should. I take blood pressure medication, thyroid medication, and a low-dose aspirin. Simple routine. But suddenly I was running out early. When I mentioned it to Caroline during one of her surprise visits, she suggested that I was probably forgetting that I'd already taken them and taking double doses. She said it with such concern, such gentle worry, that if I hadn't been counting carefully, I might have believed her. I installed a small camera in my kitchen, hidden in the clock on the wall. I told no one. I also started keeping a detailed journal of every day, every conversation, every strange occurrence. I was documenting my own sanity. In late February, I received a call from my bank. A very professional, very careful call from my relationship manager, a woman named Susan Chen, who had handled my accounts for 15 years. She said she wanted to verify some recent changes to my account structures. What changes? I asked. She seemed surprised I was asking. She said that my son Daniel had been in the previous week with power of attorney documents, making inquiries about transferring assets into a family trust. I told Susan I had never signed power of attorney documents giving Daniel control of anything. She went very quiet. Then she said, "Mrs. Brennan, I think you should come in and speak with our legal department." I went to the bank the next morning. They showed me documents. Beautiful, official-looking documents with my signature on them. Except it wasn't quite my signature. It was close, very close. But I've been signing my name the same way for 40 years. And this wasn't it. The M in Margaret had a loop that mine doesn't. The B in Brennan was too angular. Someone had forged my signature on power of attorney documents. The bank's fraud investigator, a former FBI agent named Robert Kowalski, took copies of everything. He told me not to confront anyone yet, not to let on that I knew. He said if this was what he thought it was, I needed to gather more evidence before moving. He advised me to act normal, even a little confused if I had to, while we investigated. So that's what I did. I played the role they wanted me to play. I started asking Daniel to remind me of things I remembered perfectly well. I asked Caroline what day it was when I knew exactly what day it was. I could see the relief on their faces. I could see them thinking their plan was working. And I kept recording. I got better at it. I bought tiny recording devices online, the kind that look like pens or USB drives. I placed them in my living room, in my study, in the kitchen. I wanted to know what they said when I left the room. I wanted to know what they said when they thought I couldn't understand anymore. On March 15th, 3 weeks ago, Caroline and Daniel both came to the house. They said they wanted to have a family dinner, just the three of us, like old times. Preston wasn't there. Daniel's wife Andrea wasn't there. Just my 2 children and me. They made dinner together in my kitchen, which was unusual because neither of them typically cooked. They were cheerful, almost manic in their good humor. They kept refilling my wine glass. After dinner, we sat in the living room. They told me they'd been talking, and they thought it would be better for everyone if I moved into an assisted living facility. Not because there was anything wrong with me, Caroline said, but because this house was so big. So much to maintain. And wouldn't I be happier somewhere with people around, activities, assistance if I needed it? They'd already visited a place in Stamford, they said. It was lovely. It had gardens and a movie theater and restaurant-style dining. They had brochures. I asked them what would happen to this house. Daniel said they'd have to sell it, of course, to pay for the care facility. I asked what would happen to the properties in Florida and Colorado. Caroline said those would probably need to be sold too, or maybe they'd keep the Colorado place for family vacations. I asked about the investment portfolios, the trust funds Thomas had set up, the life insurance payout that was still sitting in an account gathering interest. They both got very quiet. Then Daniel said, "Mom, you don't need to worry about any of that. We'll handle everything. That's what we're here for." I excused myself and went to the bathroom. I didn't go to the bathroom. I went to my bedroom and retrieved the pen recorder from my nightstand. I turned it on and put it in my cardigan pocket. Then I returned to the living room and asked them to explain everything to me one more time because I was having trouble following. And they did. They explained it all. They thought I was confused, you see. They thought I was far enough gone that I wouldn't remember this conversation tomorrow, or if I did, I wouldn't be believed. Daniel said, "Mom, the reality is that you're not capable of managing these assets anymore. We've consulted with attorneys, and given your cognitive decline, we can petition the court for conservatorship. It's actually the responsible thing to do. Someone needs to protect you from yourself before you make bad decisions." Caroline added, "And honestly, Mom, you've had a good long run. You and Dad built something incredible, and now it's our turn to manage it. You don't need $18 million sitting in accounts when you can't even remember what day it is half the time. We can put that money to work. Daniel's investment opportunities alone could double it. And think of the grandchildren's education funds, the family legacy." I asked, my voice small and uncertain. "But what about me? What about what I need?" Daniel actually laughed, not unkindly, but patronizingly. "Mom, you'll have everything you need. The care facility is top-notch. But the reality is, you're 62 years old. You could live another 20, 30 years in that place. We can't have that much capital just sitting around paying for one person's housing when it could be building generational wealth." I let a tear roll down my cheek. "So, you're saying once I'm in the facility, all of the money, all of the properties, everything your father built, it all goes to you?" "It's not like that," Caroline said, but her voice had an edge now. "It's our inheritance, Mom. Dad would have wanted us to have it. He didn't build all of this just for it to be wasted on around-the-clock care for someone who doesn't even know where they are most of the time." "And I don't know where I am most of the time?" I asked softly. "Mom, you put a turkey in the oven and forgot to turn it on," Daniel said. "You call me sometimes and ask me the same question 3 times in one conversation. Last week, you told Caroline you couldn't find your car keys and she found them in the refrigerator. I never put my keys in the refrigerator, but I didn't say that. I just nodded and wiped my eyes. I said I was tired and needed to rest. They both hugged me, told me they loved me, told me not to worry about anything. After they left, I sat in my living room for an hour, just breathing, listening to my own heartbeat, making sure the rage didn't consume me before I could use it. The next morning, I called Robert Kowalski at the bank. I told him I had recordings. He told me to make copies immediately and store them in multiple locations. Then I called my attorney, Marcus Webb, who had been Thomas's attorney and friend for 25 years. Marcus came to my house that same day. I played him everything, every recording, every conversation. Marcus is not an emotional man. He's been practicing law for 40 years, mostly high-stakes corporate litigation. But when he finished listening, he took off his glasses and cleaned them 3 times, which is what he does when he's furious and trying to control it. Then he said, "Margaret, this is elder abuse. This is fraud. This is conspiracy to commit fraud. And if we handle this correctly, this is going to be a very, very bad week for your children." We spent the next 2 weeks building the case. Marcus brought in a forensic accountant who traced every suspicious transaction. The forged power of attorney documents. The attempts to change beneficiary designations on life insurance policies. The inquiries Daniel had made to real estate agents about listing my properties. The applications Caroline had submitted to 3 different assisted living facilities on my behalf, including one that specialized in memory care for advanced dementia patients. We also discovered something worse. The medication disappearing from my organizer wasn't random. Caroline had been taking my thyroid medication and replacing some of the pills with pills that looked identical but contained diphenhydramine, Benadryl, over-the-counter sleep medication. She'd been drugging me to make me seem more confused, more forgetful, more tired. The forensic accountant found her credit card statement with a purchase from an online pharmacy that sold pill casings and powder forms of various medications. She'd been making fake pills to put in my organizer. Marcus filed a complaint with the police. Detective Sarah Mendoza from the Greenwich Police Department took my statement over the course of 6 hours. She listened to every recording. She took the fake pills for analysis. She interviewed Susan Chen at the bank. She interviewed Dr. Restrepo, who provided documentation of my cognitive test results. She interviewed my friends, my housekeeper, my gardener, anyone who could testify to my mental state. And then Marcus did something brilliant. He didn't tell Daniel and Caroline that we knew. He didn't give them a chance to prepare. He filed a civil suit against both of them for elder abuse, fraud, attempted theft, and emotional distress. And he simultaneously worked with Detective Mendoza to prepare criminal charges. The civil suit was filed on a Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, Caroline was at my door, hysterical, demanding to know what I was doing, screaming that I was confused, that I'd been manipulated by Marcus, that I didn't understand what I was signing. Preston was with her, and he tried to be the reasonable one, suggesting we all sit down and talk like adults. I told them both to leave my property, or I'd call the police. Caroline actually lunged at me, trying to grab my phone. My housekeeper, Rosa, who's been with me for 12 years and is built like a wrestler, stepped between us. Caroline called me a vindictive bitch. She said I was a terrible mother. She said I'd ruined her life. Daniel took a different approach. He sent his attorney, a slick corporate lawyer named Mitchell Crane, to negotiate. Mitchell suggested that this was all a misunderstanding, that emotions were high, that perhaps we could settle this quietly within the family. He offered to have Daniel drop any claims to power of attorney and to return any disputed funds in exchange for dropping the lawsuit. Marcus told Mitchell that we weren't interested in settlement. Marcus told Mitchell that he should advise his client to hire a criminal defense attorney because the DA's office was reviewing charges. That's when they realized how much trouble they were in. That's when the story started leaking to the local press. Greenwich woman sues adult children for elder abuse. Multi-million-dollar estate dispute ends up in court. My phone started ringing off the hook. Old friends, people from the club, business associates of Thomas's. Everyone wanted to know if it was true. Some people were supportive. Some people suggested I was being too harsh, that family should work things out privately. I stopped answering my phone. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks after the filing. That was this morning. Both Daniel and Caroline were required to appear. They came with their attorneys, and they looked like they'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. Caroline wouldn't meet my eyes. Daniel stared at me like he was trying to will me to have a heart attack right there in the courtroom. The judge, the Honorable Patricia Moreno, is a woman in her late 60s who has a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. She called the court to order and asked Marcus to present an overview of the case. Marcus stood up, and in his calm, measured voice, he laid out everything. The forged documents, the attempts to access my accounts, the applications to care facilities, the drugging, everything. Then he said, "Your Honor, my client would like to present audio evidence of conversations between herself and the defendants that demonstrate clear intent to defraud and exploit her." Judge Moreno looked at me. "Mrs. Brennan, please approach." Which brings us back to now, to this moment. To me, standing at the bench with this small recorder in my hand, and my children staring at me from their table like I'm the one who betrayed them. Judge Moreno asks me if I understand that I'm submitting this evidence under penalty of perjury, that I'm swearing the recordings are authentic and unedited. I say yes, I understand. She asks me if I made these recordings with the knowledge and consent of the people being recorded. I say no, I did not have their consent, but Connecticut is a one-party consent state, which means I only need my own consent to record conversations I'm part of. Marcus has already briefed me on this. The recordings are legal. Judge Moreno takes the recorder and the typed transcripts Marcus has prepared. She says she's going to recess for 30 minutes to review the material. She advises Daniel and Caroline's attorneys to use this time to consult with their clients about whether they want to continue with this hearing or explore settlement options. We all file out of the courtroom. I go to a small witness room with Marcus and Robert Kowalski, who's here as a witness. Rosa is here too, sitting in the gallery, and she comes with us. She hugs me and tells me in Spanish that I'm the bravest woman she's ever known. I'm not feeling brave. I'm feeling like I might vomit. Marcus's phone rings. It's Mitchell Crane, Daniel's attorney. Marcus puts him on speaker. Mitchell says, "Marcus, my client would like to discuss settlement terms." Marcus says, "Your client had his chance to settle 3 weeks ago. Mrs. Brennan is no longer interested." Mitchell says, "What does she want?" Marcus looks at me. I take the phone. "I want them to admit what they did," I say. "In court, on the record. I want them to admit to the forgery, the drugging, the planning to put me away and take everything. I want them to admit they saw their own mother as nothing but a bank account they were waiting to access. I want everyone to know what they are." Mitchell starts to respond, but I hang up. My hands are still shaking, but it feels good. It feels powerful. We go back into the courtroom. Judge Moreno is already at the bench. Her face is hard to read. But there's something in her eyes when she looks at Daniel and Caroline. It might be disgust. "I've reviewed the recordings," she says. "I've read the transcripts. I've also reviewed the preliminary police investigation report and the forensic accounting summary. Before I make any rulings in the civil matter, I want to address the criminal concerns I have about what I've just heard." She looks directly at Caroline. "Ms. Whitmore, are you aware that surreptitiously drugging another person, even with over-the-counter medication, constitutes assault in the state of Connecticut?" Caroline's attorney, a woman named Diane Rothstein, starts to speak, but Judge Moreno holds up her hand. "I'm not asking for legal argument. I'm asking if your client understands the gravity of what she's done." Caroline is crying now. Real tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking. But she doesn't speak. Judge Moreno turns to Daniel. "Mr. Brennan, are you aware that forging legal documents and attempting to use them to access another person's financial accounts constitutes fraud and identity theft under state and federal law?" Daniel finally speaks. "Your Honor, I was trying to protect my mother. She's not well. Anyone can see that She scored in the 92nd percentile on cognitive function tests administered by a board-certified neurologist," Judge Moreno interrupts. "She managed her late husband's multi-million-dollar estate for 3 years without any issues until you decided she was incompetent. The only cognitive problem I see in this courtroom is the failure of 2 grown adults to recognize that their mother is smarter than they are." Someone in the gallery laughs, then quickly stifles it. Judge Moreno is not done. "I'm going to grant the plaintiff's motion for immediate restraining orders against both defendants. Neither of you is to come within 500 feet of your mother. Neither of you is to contact her directly or indirectly. Neither of you is to make any inquiries about her medical status, financial status, or living situation to anyone, including family members, friends, or service providers. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest." She looks at the prosecutors who are sitting in on the hearing. "I'm also making a formal referral to the state's attorney's office for criminal charges. This isn't just a family dispute. This is elder abuse, and it's exactly the kind of case that needs to be prosecuted to send a message that this behavior will not be tolerated in our community." Then she turns to me. Her face softens just slightly. "Mrs. Brennan, I'm sorry you've had to go through this. I'm sorry your own children put you in this position. You did the right thing by gathering evidence. You did the right thing by seeking help. You did the right thing by standing up for yourself. I hope other people in your situation are watching and learning from your courage." I nod. I can't speak because I'm crying now too, but these are different tears. These are tears of relief, of validation, of knowing that I'm not crazy, I never was crazy, and everyone in this room now knows it. The civil trial is scheduled for 3 months from now. Marcus says Daniel and Caroline will almost certainly try to settle before then, but I haven't decided yet if I'll allow that. Part of me wants my day in court. Part of me wants to sit on that witness stand and tell my full story, under oath, in public record, so that no one can ever question what happened. The criminal charges came down 2 weeks after the hearing. Caroline was charged with assault and conspiracy to commit fraud. Daniel was charged with forgery, attempted fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. They both posted bail. They're both facing prison time. Though Marcus says first-time offenders in white-collar cases often get probation and restitution instead of jail. I don't care about jail. I care about the record. I care about the truth. Preston filed for divorce from Caroline 1 week after she was charged. Apparently, his family money came with expectations of respectability, and elder abuse scandals don't meet those expectations. Preston's attorney made it clear that the Whitmore family wants nothing to do with this mess. Caroline called me from an unknown number, crying, begging me to make it all go away. She said she'd lost everything: her marriage, her social standing, her friends, her future. She said I'd ruined her life over a misunderstanding. I told her that she'd tried to drug me, forge my signature, and lock me away in a care facility so she could spend my money. I told her that wasn't a misunderstanding. That was a crime. And I told her that the number she was calling from was in violation of the restraining order, and if she ever contacted me again, I'd have her arrested. Then I hung up and blocked the number. Daniel's wife, Andrea, reached out through Marcus. She wanted me to know that she hadn't known about any of it, that she'd thought Daniel was trying to help me, not hurt me. She wanted me to know that she was filing for divorce, too. She wanted me to know that my grandchildren, Daniel's 2 sons, ages 8 and 6, missed me and asked about me. That broke my heart in a way that nothing else had. My grandchildren. I haven't seen them since this started. Daniel used them as shields, telling me that if I loved them, I'd sign the papers, I'd cooperate, I'd make things easy for everyone. Marcus is working on visitation arrangements. Andrea is cooperating. She's offered to bring the boys to me, supervised visits to start. She's also offered to testify at the trial if needed. She says she has her own stories about Daniel's behavior, his obsession with my assets, his constant calculations of what he'd do with the money when I was gone. She said there were nights when he'd lie in bed next to her, wide awake, planning renovations to my house before he'd even inherited it, planning which properties to keep and which to sell, planning investments and business ventures and vacation homes, all built on the assumption that I'd be out of the picture soon. The assisted living facility in Stamford that Caroline had applied to on my behalf sent me a letter. They'd heard about the case, and they wanted me to know that they'd cooperated fully with the police investigation. They'd provided copies of all of Caroline's correspondence, including emails where she described me as severely cognitively impaired and a danger to myself. The facility director, a kind-sounding man named Joseph Brennan, no relation, called me personally to apologize. He said that in his 30 years running senior care facilities, he'd seen too many cases like mine. Children who saw dollar signs instead of parents. Children who mistook inheritance for entitlement. He said he was glad I'd caught it before it went any further. But here's the thing that haunts me. I almost didn't catch it. If I'd put my keys in the refrigerator that one time Caroline claimed, if I'd actually forgotten something important instead of just the oven temperature, if I'd been a little bit older, or a little bit more isolated, or a little bit less willing to trust my own perception of reality, they would have won. They would have put me away. They would have taken everything. And I'd be sitting in some memory care unit right now, medicated and confused, while my children sold off my life piece by piece. How many other people are living that nightmare right now? How many other mothers and fathers are being told they're incompetent, they're confused, they're not capable of managing their own affairs, when really they're just inconveniently alive and inconveniently in control of assets their children want? I've started speaking about this. Marcus connected me with an elder law advocacy group in Hartford. I gave my first talk 3 weeks ago to a room full of attorneys and social workers who specialize in elder abuse cases. I told them everything. I played them the recordings. I showed them the fake pills. I explained every manipulation tactic my children used. And when I was done, the room sat in silence for a full minute before the applause started. A woman in her 70s came up to me afterward. She was crying. She said, "My son told me I have dementia. He took me to a doctor who said I have dementia. But I don't feel like I have dementia. I feel like myself. But everyone keeps telling me I'm wrong about that." I gave her Marcus's card. I told her to get a second opinion. I told her to start documenting everything. I told her she wasn't crazy. 2 weeks later, Marcus called me. The woman had come to see him. Her son had been forging checks from her account for 2 years. She's pressing charges. I'm doing media interviews now too. Local news picked up the story, then regional, then a national network called. They want to do a full feature, an hour-long investigation into elder financial abuse using my case as the central story. I said yes. Marcus thinks I'm crazy, thinks I'm inviting more pain, more public scrutiny. But I don't care anymore. This isn't about protecting my privacy. This is about protecting other people. The trial is next month. Both Daniel and Caroline have entered preliminary pleas of not guilty, which means we're going forward. Marcus says they're hoping I'll back down, that maternal instinct will kick in, that I'll decide I can't send my own children to prison. They're wrong. I'm not sending them to prison. They sent themselves there when they decided I was worth more to them dead or institutionalized than alive. I've rewritten my will. Marcus helped me. Everything now goes to charity. The Greenwich Hospital Foundation, where I volunteered for years. The Audubon Society, because Thomas loved birds and conservation. A scholarship fund at Yale, Thomas's alma mater, specifically for first-generation college students. The house will be donated to a nonprofit that converts luxury properties into assisted living facilities with sliding scale payment options. The Florida property will be sold and proceeds will fund elder abuse prevention programs. The Colorado property will become a retreat center for caregivers who need respite. Daniel and Caroline will receive nothing. Not $1, not one possession, not one photograph. The will is very specific about this. It explains exactly why they're disinherited. It includes dates and descriptions of their actions. It's not just a legal document, it's a historical record. It's the truth that will survive me. People ask me if I'm sad, if I grieve the loss of my children. The answer is complicated. I grieve the children I thought I had. I grieve the son who used to bring me flowers on my birthday for no reason except that he loved me. I grieve the daughter who used to call me just to talk, to share stories about her day, to ask my advice about life. But those children? They don't exist anymore. Maybe they never existed. Maybe I just saw what I wanted to see, what I'd invested decades of love and money and energy into creating. The people who drugged me, who forged my signature, who planned to institutionalize me so they could liquidate my assets. Those aren't my children. Those are criminals who happen to share my DNA. And I don't grieve criminals. I prosecute them. Tonight, I'm sitting in my living room, the same living room where Daniel and Caroline laid out their plans, where they described me as a burden and an obstacle, where they calculated my worth in dollars instead of love. Rosa made dinner. Marcus stopped by with legal updates. Susan from the bank called to check on me. Dr. Restrepo sent flowers with a note that said, "Proud of you." I'm surrounded by people who see me, who value me, who recognize my humanity and my capacity. And I'm at peace. Not happy. This situation doesn't allow for happiness, but at peace. I know who I am. I know I'm competent. I know I made the right choices. I know that standing up for myself was exactly what Thomas would have wanted me to do. He was a fighter in business, always said you had to protect what was yours, never let anyone take advantage. He taught our children that too, or he tried to. I guess they learned a different lesson. They learned that protecting what's yours means taking from others, even if those others are your own parents. The preliminary criminal hearings are next week. Marcus says I should prepare for both Daniel and Caroline to take the stand and paint themselves as concerned children who were just trying to help their declining mother. They'll say I'm vindictive, that I've always been controlling, that I can't accept that I'm getting older and need help. Their attorneys will attack my character, my decisions, my choice to pursue this legally instead of handling it privately. They'll make me the villain. I'm ready for it. I have Dr. Restrepo's cognitive evaluation. I have testimony from 24 witnesses who've interacted with me regularly over the past year. I have the bank records showing I've managed complex financial transactions without error. I have the recordings where they literally planned my institutionalization. I have the fake pills. I have the forged documents. I have the truth. The truth is stubborn. It doesn't care about narrative or spin or legal maneuvering. It just sits there, heavy and undeniable, waiting for anyone brave enough to face it. If you're watching this and you're recognizing patterns, if you're seeing your own family in my story, please listen to me. Trust yourself. Document everything. Get second opinions. Talk to professionals, real professionals, not just the doctor or lawyer your children recommend. Don't let anyone convince you that you're incompetent when you know you're not. Don't sign anything you don't understand. Don't give up control of your assets or your medical decisions just because someone tells you it's easier or safer or more convenient. And if you're one of the children, if you're sitting there thinking your elderly parent is being difficult or stubborn about giving you access to their accounts or updating their will, ask yourself this: why do you need that access? Why do you need that update? Is it really for their benefit or is it for yours? And if it's for yours, why are you entitled to their assets before they're gone? Why can't you build your own wealth instead of waiting to inherit theirs? There's a conversation happening in this country about elder care and cognitive decline and how we handle aging parents. It's an important conversation, but it's being hijacked by people who use legitimate concerns about dementia and Alzheimer's as cover for financial abuse. They point to one forgotten appointment, one misplaced item, one moment of confusion, and they scream incompetent so they can rush to the courthouse with conservatorship petitions. And once they have that conservatorship, once they're in control, the elderly person has almost no recourse. They're deemed incompetent by the very court system that's supposed to protect them. I got lucky. I caught it early. I had the resources to fight back. I had a good attorney and a supportive bank and a police department that took me seriously. Not everyone has those advantages. Not everyone has $18 million in assets that makes their case newsworthy. What about the elderly person with $100,000 in savings? What about the person who owns one house, one car, one retirement account? Are they less deserving of protection? Is their abuse less serious? This is why I'm speaking out. This is why I'm doing interviews and giving talks and letting national television cameras into my home to film my story. Because maybe, just maybe, if enough people hear this, if enough people understand how easy it is to exploit an elderly person, if enough people recognize the warning signs, we can stop some of this from happening. The judge in my criminal case told me I was brave. I don't feel brave. I feel angry and betrayed and heartbroken. But if that anger can be useful, if that betrayal can serve as a warning to others, if that heartbreak can prevent even one family from going through what I've gone through, then maybe it's worth it. Next month, I'll stand in a courtroom and face my children across the divide of what they've done. I'll listen to them or their attorneys try to explain it away, try to minimize it, try to make it sound like a well-intentioned mistake instead of a calculated crime. And then I'll watch as the legal system, the same system that protects property rights and contractual obligations and inheritance law, decides whether what they did to me matters enough for consequences. I think it will. Judge Moreno's face when she read those transcripts, the prosecutor's voice when she described the charges, the detective's determination when she investigated. These people understand. They see elder abuse for what it is, a betrayal of the most fundamental human bond, the parent-child relationship. They see it as the exploitation of vulnerability, the weaponizing of love and trust for financial gain. Whatever happens in court, I've already won. I've reclaimed my story. I've proven my competence. I've protected my assets and my autonomy. I've exposed my children for what they are. And I've used my privilege and my platform to shine light on an issue that affects hundreds of thousands of elderly people every year. Thomas used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they build, it's what they do when someone tries to tear it down. By that measure, I think I'm doing okay. I think he'd be proud of me. I know I'm proud of myself. So here's what I want you to take from this. You are not your children's inheritance. You are not a burden. You are not incompetent just because you're getting older. You have the right to control your own life, your own assets, your own medical decisions, for as long as you're capable of doing so. And capable means what a doctor says it means, not what your children say it means. If someone is pressuring you to sign documents, to give up control, to move into a facility, to change your will, slow down. Ask questions. Get independent advice. Trust your instincts. And if those instincts are telling you that something is wrong, that someone is trying to manipulate you, that you're being abused, you're probably right. I was right. And I have the recordings to prove it. And in a few weeks, I'll have the court verdict to prove it too. My name is Margaret Catherine Brennan. I'm 62 years old. I'm cognitively intact. I'm financially independent. I'm legally protected. And I'm no one's victim. Remember that. Remember me. And if you ever need to, remember that you can fight back too.